Have you ever looked at a Roman statue and wondered, why so many of them have golden hair? The Romans built aqueducts, conquered nations, and gave us law. But they also did something far stranger. They bleached their hair with goat fat. They bought wigs made from the scalps of their enemies. And they turned a barbarian color into a divine obsession. Here's a question that might change how you see the ancient world. Did the ancient Romans actually love blondes, or did they just love owning them? Before we unravel that golden mystery, take a breath. Then take a moment to subscribe to Little Historical and hit the like button, if you're ready to see history from a different angle. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights. Lean in. And let's find out why an empire that mocked blondes couldn't stop trying to become one.
The first Roman soldiers who crossed the Alps into Gaul and Germania expected mud and savagery. They did not expect to be outshone. But as the morning mist lifted over the northern rivers, they saw them, towering men and women with skin like fresh marble and hair that seemed to drink the sunlight. For a people who had built an empire on arrogance, this was an unsettling discovery. Because the Romans, for all their engineering and law, could not grow hair that color. And that truth burned hotter than any campfire. Imagine being a hardened legionary, scarred from civil wars, and suddenly finding yourself staring at a barbarian warrior whose golden manner moves like a flag of pure defiance. The reports sent back to Rome read less like military dispatches and more like jealous fashion columns. One scribe noted, almost bitterly, that the enemy's hair shone even in the gloom of a forest. Another suggested, only half in jest, that the Senate should ship bleach north with a next supply of arrows. But beneath the mockery, there was something darker. Envy. And envy, in Rome, always led to desire. Those blonde northerners were not just enemies. They became fantasies. Roman soldiers whispered about them in their tents at night, about the way the women's hair spilled over shoulders like captured gold, about the men whose pale brightness made Roman olive skin feel suddenly ordinary. It was not admiration. It was a quiet, hungry obsession that no centurion could drill away. The battlefield became a mirror, and Rome did not like what it saw. It saw a beauty it could never naturally possess. And so, as empires always do, it decided to take it. That is where the real story begins. Not in a salon, but in the bloody soil of Germania. Because before any Roman woman bleached her hair or bought a wig, a soldier looked at a dying enemy and thought, I want what she has. And once that thought took root, nothing, not morality, not tradition, not even the stench of goat fat and vinegar, could stop it. The Romans had conquered lands and peoples. But now they wanted to conquer a color. And they would go to shocking lengths to wear it on their own heads. And so they did. The shocking lengths began not with bleach, but with blades. When Roman legions swept through a defeated Germanic village, they took the usual spoils, gold, weapons, slaves. But soon, a more intimate prize joined the list: hair. Long, golden, still warm from the scalp it had been torn from. Merchants followed the armies like vultures, paying soldiers for every severed lock they could carry. The hair was washed, perfumed, and bundled into crates destined for Rome. It was the empire's first luxury supply chain, and its raw material was human vanity soaked in blood. Imagine the workshops tucked behind the forum. Slaves with nimble fingers sorting through mounds of pale yellow hair, separating coarse strands from silky ones. The finest locks, taken from young women, they whispered, were woven into wigs so natural that only the wearer knew the truth. A Roman matron would sit before a bronze mirror, her own dark hair pinned away, as a stylist lowered a cap of German gold onto her head. She would tilt her chin, smile slowly, and see a stranger looking back. A stranger who had once screamed in a language she would never understand. And that, somehow, made her feel powerful. Owning one of these wigs was not merely fashionable. It was a statement whispered through every dinner party. A senator's wife with golden curls was not just beautiful. She was dangerous. She was saying, without a word, that her husband's legions had crushed the north. That she wore the enemy's beauty like a second skin. That her vanity was built on bones. The poorer women, who could never afford such trophies, resorted to their own desperate measures. Homemade bleaches of ash and goat fat that burned the scalp and left hair brittle as straw. But even they dreamed of that stolen gold. The most expensive wigs were stored in ivory boxes, treated with oils imported from Egypt, and worn only for the most seductive of evenings. Poets hinted that some Roman women refused to remove their German wigs even in bed, as if the hair carried the spirit of the conquered, a cold, blonde ghost that made their lovers shiver with a mix of fear and fascination. Rome had turned murder into millinery, and the city loved it. But this was only the beginning. Because soon, the women who wore those wigs would start asking an even darker question. What if they could become blonde without stealing from the dead? That question led Roman women to the most dangerous apothecaries in the city. And it led the poet Ovid to write some of the most contradictory verses ever carved into Latin. Because Ovid understood something that most moralists refused to admit, the chase for blonde beauty was never about hair. It was about deception, desire, and the delicious game of pretending to be what you were not. In his famous guide to seduction, the Ars Amatoria, he praised golden-haired women as irresistible as sunrise. But then, with a smirk that you can almost hear across 2,000 years, he warned his male readers to beware the false blonde. Natural gold, he claimed, was a gift from Venus herself. But dyed hair, that was a lie. And lies, however beautiful, would eventually unravel in your hands. Imagine a warm evening in Rome. Oil lamps flicker against frescoed walls. A man leans close to a woman whose pale curls glow in the dim light. He whispers a line from Ovid, teasing her about whether her hair is truly hers. She laughs, low, slow, and dangerous, and does not answer. Instead, she lets her fingers trace the edge of his toga and asks if he would prefer an honest brunette who bores him by midnight. The tension hangs in the air like smoke. Because Ovid had handed men a weapon of suspicion, but women had turned it into armor. Every blonde became a mystery. Was she natural? Was she wearing a dead German scalp? Or had she spent hours with her head slathered in a stinking paste of sulfur and hope? The poet mocked vanity while depending on it for his own popularity. He teased women for their desperation to be golden, yet he admitted in quieter moments that a blonde's gaze could make a senator forget his own name. This hypocrisy was Rome in miniature. The city claimed to value virtue, but its bedrooms were filled with bleached hair and whispered secrets. Ovid eventually went too far, and Augustus exiled him for his scandalous writings. But even from the Black Sea shores, he kept writing about the golden-haired girls of Rome, as if the memory of their artificial beauty was the only warmth left in his frozen exile. And yet, across the city, one woman was about to prove that blonde ambition could reach even the imperial throne. That woman was Poppaea Sabina, and she did not merely wear blonde hair. She weaponized it. Born with dark Italian locks like almost everyone else in Rome, Poppaea understood a truth that poets only hinted at. Gold was not just a color. It was a throne. And if the gods had not given her that throne naturally, she would build it herself, strand by stolen strand, until the entire empire bowed to her reflection. Imagine the private chambers of Nero's most dangerous wife. Servants move in silence, carrying trays of donkey milk for her bath and powdered saffron for her cheeks. But the most precious object in the room sits on a cushion of purple silk, a wig of pale, shimmering gold, imported at tremendous cost from the Germanic tribes her husband's generals were still burning. Poppaea does not simply put it on. She performs a ritual. She lets her dark hair fall loose first, studying her own unadorned face in a bronze mirror. Then, slowly, she lifts the wig and lowers it onto her head. The transformation is electric. Her eyes seem lighter. Her skin glows. She looks like a goddess who has descended from a fresco, and she knows it. Roman historians like Tacitus hated her for this. They described her as beautiful beyond all measure but corrupt to her very soul. What they meant, of course, was that she had mastered the one thing Rome could never control: desire. Poppaea's blonde curls became her signature at court. Every senator who visited the palace found himself staring at her hair instead of listening to Nero's terrible lyre playing. Every noblewoman rushed to copy her shade, paying fortunes for the same German wigs, the same bleaching powders, the same cold, untouchable glamour. Within months, half the female aristocracy looked like they had stepped out of a northern fairy tale. But Poppaea's blonde ambition came with a price. She was not just Nero's wife, she was his obsession. And obsessions in imperial Rome ended badly. Legend whispers that she never let Nero see her without her wig, not even in the most intimate of moments. She understood that once he saw the real woman beneath the gold, the spell would break. One night, during a heated argument over his singing, Nero struck her. Whether it was murder or accident, history cannot agree. But Poppaea died with her golden hair still perfect, still glowing, still deceiving. They say Nero wept over her body, not for the woman, but for the blonde ghost he had fallen in love with. And Rome, ever hungry for spectacle, built statues of her with those same shimmering curls, immortal, untouchable, and forever false. The empire had crowned a blonde queen, but her crown was made of other women's hair, and it smelled faintly of smoke.